So your overall grade was as influenced by the 5 or 6 categories of character as they were for the 5 or 6 categories of academic subjects. And I'm just aware of how far we have moved away from that in our society, and it's disturbing to me.
Welcome to the Fueling Deals Podcast, the podcast that teaches how to accelerate your business growth through all types of deals. It's time to fuel up, so buckle in with your host, Corey Kupfer.
There are only 2 ways to grow your business: organically through sales and marketing and providing great products and services, and inorganically through deals. Too many companies focus only on the first way, organic growth. Welcome to the podcast, which will help accelerate your business growth inorganically. My guests are a huge variety of deal makers and experts on all types of deals who have personal experience that can help you grow, get clear, learn best practices, and avoid mistakes. We discuss everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions to smaller deals that you can do even without significant capital. Today is a solo cast, and I'm going to be talking about character. And you may say, well, this is a deals podcast, Corey. Why are you talking about character? Well, let's see if you can make the link by the end. I think it's pretty clear to me. But what has brought me up thinking about this recently is that there's been just a lot of things, in the news and just in the political landscape and then even, some other stuff that, I have over time thought about from time to time. And it's sort of all come together to me. And I wanted to bring it up in this solo cast. So, recently there was this college admissions scandal where a number of parents, including some, actors, actresses, famous people, etc., were cheating to get their kids into college, paying off people, all this stuff. And I'm sure most of you listeners have heard about it. And it, got me thinking because, social media, etc., there were people who were defending or saying, hey, they were just doing the best they could for their kids. Everybody wants the best for their kids. And it made me think of this conversation of character. I mean, I don't think getting your kids into school under false pretenses serves them when it demonstrates a lack of character. On the flip side, I saw this video recently, and I promise I'm going to bring this back to deals at some point, but I saw this video recently online where a tennis player, it was a clip, where a tennis player, I wish I remembered his name, I could credit him, but the other player served, and the umpire called it out, and the player who was returning the serve said to the to his opponent, you may want to challenge that, or hey, challenge that, that was in. So basically, even the umpire got the call wrong, and even though it was against his interest, he told his opponent to challenge. And the guy was sort of surprised, and the crowd was laughing. And the guy said, really? And he said, yeah. And he challenged it, and it turned out that it was in. So this guy, against his own interest, right, in a tennis match, did the right thing. And the interesting thing is that, frankly, that should not be a video that even needed to circulate, right? The only reason that circulated and that I was impressed by it and other people were impressed by it is because it often doesn't happen, right? Even if you see a ball is in tennis, a lot of times the players will not call it in if the umpire called it out. Maybe think of basketball as well. In basketball, people fake they do, and soccer as well. They do this all the time in soccer, right? Where, they take dives. Basketball, it's they try to draw an offensive foul by diving. Soccer, they do it all the time. When somebody touches them and they fall down. For me, these kind of things have become just part of the landscape and acceptable. We don't question them anymore. In fact, we sort of laugh. Oh, we say, oh, he drew the charge. Oh, look, he got the penalty. In politics, and again, I'm not looking for this to be a partisan conversation. I don't want to get into, I don't need political comments in the comments of the solocast. But there's a lot of name calling and nicknames made up for people and bad things being said about people. And all of this stuff really makes me think of character. And I'm going to bring up one last thing before I relate it to deals. And that is, I remember my father-in-law, who passed away a couple of years ago, maybe about, 7, 8 years ago, when we were moving him out of a house that he lived in for over 40 years because he could no longer, live alone, take care of himself and take care of that big house at least. And we were going through, helping him pack up and going through his stuff. And, my father-in-law was born in the 30s, and we found some of his old report cards, right, from grammar school I think it was from the early 40s, and I think it was grammar school into junior high, whatever, with middle school, and it was really, really interesting. They had two sides to the report card. One was the academic side, which had reading and math and history and all that kind of stuff, and they had grades there. And then on the other side were an equal number of categories that were all related to character, right? It was promptness, it was compassion and integrity and honesty and all things like that, values like that. And there were grades on that side as well. And when I spoke to my father-in-law about it, he told me that at that time, the character grades were equally weighted with the academic grades. So your overall grade was as influenced by the 5 or 6 categories of character as they were for the 5 or 6 categories of academic subjects. And I'm just aware of how far we have moved away from that in our society, and it's disturbing to me. Now, when we relate this to business and deals, it shows up like it shows up everywhere else. There are people who do deals with people who they don't respect or don't like because they think it's going to be lucrative. There are times when people don't listen, let me stop talking about people. I'll talk about myself, right? I entered into a business partnership in the past where I thought I had done my due diligence. Sometimes people don't do enough due diligence. So this conversation of character, first of all, is a due diligence conversation, right? You do your financial due diligence, you do your legal due diligence, you do your cultural and vision alignment due diligence. You should be doing character due diligence. Now, obviously, that's harder to do than to look at somebody's financials or make sure that they have no lawsuits outstanding, or try to check their references, because in a interview, quote unquote, situation, in a courting situation, people are usually putting on their best behavior. But you can definitely go around and speak with people who they know and try to find out. I mean, I recorded a podcast with a guest today where he was talking about how they did some due diligence on a deal, and that, they found out that 5 different people said, oh, I would never do business with that person. Sometimes you can find that out. But in my case, I went into a business partnership where the public persona was positive. The public reputation was positive, at least at that time. And it was only over time that I found, there were signs early on, and there was probably a point at which, I ignored the signs, which is my own fault, because there was some good business opportunities there. And because I tend to, I never want to change this, but I tend to be a very positive and optimistic guy. So sometimes what that does is it causes me to miss reality because I'll look at things with rose-colored glasses to some extent, but at some point it definitely comes through. And ultimately there was a misalignment of character, a misalignment of values, a misalignment as to the way employees should be treated, the way people were valued, the way people were looked at, the way the business should be run, the way clients were treated, the way partners were treated. And that business partnership ended up ending. So one of the things that I think is, so it's not only, generally in the world, right? But I think it affects everything. You know what I mean? I think new norms get established. And in business, if you let that new norm be that you're willing to do business with people who you're not aligned with, you're going to run into problems. And in 30-something, 34 years, in my 34th year of legal practice now, all of the deals that I have seen not work come from some sort of disconnect or misalignment. And often it is, sometimes it's just a lack of shared vision and values, right? Sometimes, neither person or side is bad. They just, want to go in a different direction, or maybe they didn't do right due to other kind of due diligence on the deal, et cetera. But there are so many cases in which somebody just doesn't turn out to be the person they said they were going to be, or when push comes to shove and there are fundamental business decisions to make on certain things in tough situations. Sometimes it doesn't come out until there are tough situations, right? Sometimes when things are good, everything's alive, but then there were tough situations. Certain people may be willing to do things that someone else is not. And I don't mean in the good way. Sometimes it's in the good way, but I mean in the way of things that don't fit with somebody's morality, alignment, character. Over my business career, I've had so many situations where I could have made choices that in the short run might have benefited me. Where people have made offers to me to do things that were not totally above, board or on the edge. And, fortunately, I feel like I've generally turned those down, and I'm thrilled with them. And so through my 30, almost 4 years of practice here, a lot of times I've seen business partnerships break up, other kinds of joint ventures, strategic alliances, things like break up because it turns out that one party does not operate at the same level of integrity and character as the other party. And, whereas we can overlook that here and there, and I'm not saying we should, but, sometimes we do, right? I mean, especially when we have a lot invested, whether you call it sunk time, sunk cost, maybe it's reputational because you put it out to the public, that we sometimes make choices in the short run that go against what is consistent with our own character. But those deals never work out in the long run. They always fail. And sometimes they fail ugly or they fail miserably. And sometimes that's public and sometimes that's behind the scenes. It's interesting. We've seen, how many times have we seen, I mean, it happens in politics a lot, right? Where somebody, they even have a long career, 15, 20, 30 years in politics, and then that's the thing, they're in some corruption scandal. Well, do you think that they haven't been doing things, a lot of them, that have been not aligning with people's character for, that suddenly they turned? I mean, listen, occasionally, sometimes people get into situations where they, they have something go on and they get desperate and they make poor decisions. But, a lot of times the character issues are there. They just don't come out. Right? They don't get revealed. I mean, how many people knew about this college admission scandal who didn't reveal it until the person who did ended up doing it? And by the way, from what I understand, is one of those made people was somebody who was actually had some other criminal or regulatory issues and used that as a bargaining chip. So, it's tougher to hold to your character. It's tougher to stand up. It's if the ball's on the line in tennis and that point's important to you, and maybe there's a lot of money on the line, it's tough to say, hey, no, that ball was in, the umpire was wrong, give it to my opponent challenge it. It's tougher to argue the issues in politics as opposed to calling people names, right? It's tougher to accept the fact that your kid may not get into college because maybe they're not good enough, or maybe you don't even trust that want to take the risk that they may not get into that top school. But you know what? I believe that character is much more important to it. So listen, when you do your deals, when you look for your business partners, when you look for your joint venture partners, when you look for your strategic alliance partners, I really, really suggest doing more due diligence on that than you think maybe needs to be done, because it's such a crucial issue. And it's not only a crucial issue because the deals don't work out. It's, when we live out of character, when we live where we're not in integrity, on every podcast I talk about authenticity. I ask that question at the end of the podcast when I have guests on about, what it means for them to live a life and run a business from an authentic place, right? As you know, that's a huge value of mine. Well, for me, if you're truly authentic, if you're truly connected to your inner truth, you're going to be and act out of character, because I think there is a universal truth that everybody's inner truth connects to. And that universal truth comes from a place of doing the right thing for yourself and for other people, and not taking any shortcuts and not going against what is right for you. So business has a big role. It's it's not the only role. Like I mentioned, politics does, media does, all that kind of stuff. But I think that it's time for us, and I know I'm a little on a soapbox here. I know there's a little bit of a rant. Maybe it's different than some of my other deals podcasts, but I really think it's time that there's a movement in this country and this world of people requiring and standing for people acting out of a different place, right? Out of a place of character. I wish we would go back to a time like in my father-in-law's days, back in grade school and middle school, where they graded as much on character as on grades. And so, if we start doing this in our business relationships and in our deals, and by the way, that example that we set for our employees in the business, for our children at home, we're going to end up with a better world. And listen, you're going to do better deals. You're going to build better business relationships. You're then going to be able to grow your businesses more successfully because, listen, when something is out of alignment, when that character flaw shows up in your business partner, strategic alliance partner, joint venture partner, and you got to either end that partnership or terminate that contract, the setback that you have on your business, the recovery you need to do from that, the new deal partner you need to find, and then what about the lack of trust and the hesitancy that sometimes it will cause us, right? Not to go into, and I'm not saying to have it do this. There are good people out there. There are a lot of good people out there, and you want to do deals with them, and you want to be business partners with them, and you want to do strategic alliances with them, and you want to work together, and create those synergies. But when it goes bad, sometimes we get gun shy, and the cost of that, right? The cost of, and when you're in those situations, the cost of the lack of alignment, of the guilt, of the upset, of the questioning of yourself, of the justifying, all of that energy could be going into getting new clients, finding new great employees, finding better deals to do. So it's a huge distraction, and it wears on you. And we underestimate the cost of it on our lives and our businesses. In fact, it's having been there in the past, it's sort of like it's bad, but until you're out of it, you don't know the full extent of it. And then when you finally get out of it, you realize, wow, it was even worse. It was even more of a drain. It was even more pressure. It was even more stress and tension of being out of alignment, of not acting out of character, for us. I just want to, I want to encourage everybody to take this seriously. I would also really love to hear your comments. I mean, I know this is less of a, hey, this is how you do a deal. This is what licensing deals are about. I'd love to hear your input on this, and I would love to maybe hear some other examples of where you think that character is not showing up, because I think it's all over our society. So let's start by bringing it into our own lives, into our own business deals, making sure that we act with character all the time. In a business deal, if you have underpaid somebody and they haven't realized it, you realize it. You know what? Let them know. Pay it. If there's a part of the contract that gives someone else rights and they haven't exercised those, you know what? Do what the tennis player did. Say that the ball was on the line, it was in, it wasn't out. What about the amount of goodwill that you'll build doing that? Look, listen, I talk about a story, it's in my authentic negotiating book. When I do my talks on authentic negotiating, I tell a story about my experience during the Great Recession and how I my revenues were down $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. My savings were going. People weren't paying me. Clients were going out of business, right? No deals were getting done. Income wasn't coming in. And, I had a lot of character choices to make in those moments. I could have declared bankruptcy. I could have walked away from the debt. I could have avoided my creditors. I could have, done a lot of things. And I didn't do any of those things. And you know what? Being in communication with those creditors, acting out of the character that I said, not avoiding, paying back every single penny, even that which was not personally guaranteed, even that which I could have easily shut down an entity. That was alignment for character with me. What it has also caused is that I have not lost a single business relationship. And in fact, so many of them were strengthened because I honored my word ultimately, and people saw me as a person of character. So be that in your business deals, be that in your life. I challenge you to do that. I challenge me to do that because, listen, I don't want to say I'm a saint. I make mistakes as well. And I would love to have a community of business people where we call each other forth in that way. And really just have a community of people, not only in business, where we call us forth in that way. And we no longer accept these ways of being that have changed the norm from my father-in-law's days when character was equally important to, at least in the public discourse and certainly in some other situations, having it not be so. Although I think for most of us, when we get down to it, it is still equally important. But we need to have an atmosphere and community and a character, everywhere we are in our business dealings, in our communities, in our lives, in our churches and synagogues and mosques, in our community groups, etc. And we need to hold public people, public figures, whether it's politicians or sports stars or actors and actresses, whoever it is, to account, to act with character. So here's to doing authentic business deals with character, with people who have character, and building that muscle back up for us as a society. All right, folks, great talking to you. Thank you, Fueling Deals listeners, for tuning in. Remember, there's only one difference between companies that grow inorganically and those that don't. And it's unrelated to size, amount of capital, or any other factor other than the owners and executives of companies that do deals make a decision to do deals, and then they take action. It's time to refuel. So until next week, Corey Kupfer signing out.
Thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to leave Fueling Deals a rating and review on iTunes and Google. Check out all our episodes at fuelingdeals.com to find out more resources to accelerate your business growth.